Hello, everyone. Welcome to Jing Hot Talk Show, episode 57. I am your host, James Wan. Today, we have a very special guest from Hollywood. He is a very special guest. He does acting and stunts, and he's one hell of a handsome guy. Peter, how are you doing?
Doing great. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little about you? Introduce yourself.
Sure. I've been in the film industry for about 13 years. I've been in over 70 different productions, TV shows and movies, everywhere from, TNT had The Last Ship. I was just on CSI Vegas. I had a small part on there. I worked on Westworld with Hiroyuki Sanada, which was really great to meet somebody I was a big fan of. And then this year. Also did some work on SEAL Team. I've worked on SWAT before, NCIS Hawaii. Kind of down the line of a lot of the TV shows around. I also worked on Suicide Squad and many other large productions as well.
Okay, very interesting. Tell us a little bit about your background. You grew up in Midwest. Where do you raised?
Yeah, so I was born in Columbus, Ohio, and I was there for 18 years. I grew up in the country. My high school was across the street from a cornfield. So,
do you guys tip cows?
No, I didn't do that. I mean, I'm sure people did. It wasn't something for me. But which is actually, interesting about my high school, though. In the stunt industry, it's actually a very small amount of people. I always talk about, if you think about, how many doctors are in the world, how many lawyers and politicians. There's literally millions of them in the world. These are the elite. Professions, but you think about how many people actually make a living performing, let's say acting and stunts, actually make a living doing it, not just like they're in that every once in a while, but actually that's how they make their living. There's really only maybe like 5,000 in the entire world. So it's actually a very small amount of us, And just so happens that there was another guy, two other people that are in the stunt industry, which is even a smaller amount of people that were from my high school, and didn't go to school with me either. They're in different parts, and we met in Hollywood. So it's crazy, yeah.
That's interesting. From a small town, and then you
right.
end up, that's interesting. And today you brought a clip. Can we show a clip? Oh, cool. That's awesome. So can you tell us a little bit about, growing up in Ohio?
Sure. I grew up, like I said, I grew up in a small town in Ohio, Delaware, Ohio, which is maybe about 30 miles north of Columbus, the capital city of Ohio. I started martial arts when I was about 8 years old. Started learning kung fu from a family friend. Started doing pretty well, and I went to a international tournament down in Florida when I was still kind of a beginner. It was only a couple of years in, but then there's nobody in my division, so they bumped me up to the advanced division of in sparring, and then I ended up beating everybody. I won first place, so my father's like, "Oh, he's a good fighter," but there's kung fu is a little bit fragmented as far as international competition. So my dad kind of looked around and he saw that Taekwondo was an Olympic sport. So he decided to put me in Taekwondo, see how I would do, and then my first year I didn't do that well, but then the year after that I won first place in the Junior Olympic national competition. So I kept up with that, and I've been doing that all the way through college. I was national champion a few times, and then I went to college, and I was part of my college team at UC San Diego, and did decently well there. I was third in the state in the Pac West Conference, and then after that, I got my degree in economics from UC San Diego and moved up to Los Angeles at a market research firm, and then I kind of found film and really saw that I could merge my creativity, my martial arts background, and also I'm also a writer, so just let my imagination run, but also merge it with business, because there's show and then there's business, and you have to be able to run your own business. You're basically an entrepreneur. You are the product.
Right.
Once I saw that, then I just was like, this is something I can do, and then I dedicated myself to it and learned. Did a couple programs in 3-year program in acting, and really dedicated myself to learning that craft. And then I started working a little bit here and there, and then I started working a little bit more, and then now 13 years later, here I am.
Wow. Well, coming from an Asian background, is there any pushback in your career choices going into?
Yeah, definitely. Well, my parents, I grew up with both my parents, but they were divorced, and my dad had full custody of us, and he was the Asian side of my father. He's from Taiwan. Mm-hmm. And when I first told him I wanted to go into acting, he didn't think I was serious. He's like, well, I mean, to his credit, he helped me pay for my SAG card, and helped me kind of get started. But he kind of thought that it was just going to be this passing phase, and I was going to get move on and then get a real career. But I started getting success, and I started getting a little bit more, and then and eventually he was just like, okay, well, hey, if you can do it, then you can do it. We always kind of joked about it growing up. That I was like, oh yeah, I'll go into movies, because martial arts, you kind of like, oh yeah, maybe you'll be like Jackie Chan. But but then once I started doing it, and once I started actually booking work and making some money, then all of a sudden he was just like, okay, well, I basically had to sell it to him. I was like, I'm not just an artist. I'm running a business. I am the product. I'm selling a service of acting and stunts to productions, and that's my business that I'm selling. And then once he saw it in the way that I was looking at it, he was like, okay, this makes sense now. Okay.
So how do you keep up your training, your physical training and all that, and how many style of kung fu or martial art have you learned?
Well, I started with kung fu. And that I did that for maybe about 4 years before I found Taekwondo. And then my dad, what's interesting about martial arts is a lot of times, the masters would be like, ours is the best, don't learn anymore. And I had some masters that told me that, but my dad he called it cross training. So, he's like, no, you're going to learn everything. So I learned Kung Fu, and then I did Taekwondo, and then I learned boxing, and then I learned some Muay Thai, learned some Hapkido, learned some Jiu-Jitsu, like whatever I could, little bits and pieces everywhere. And I kind of, and that was just, my introduction to it. But then as I got further along, and I really dedicated myself to Taekwondo for quite a while, but then once I got into the film industry, I did something what I call movie fu. Right, so because at the end of the day, sometimes it's really difficult for traditional martial artists to move into screen fighting, because really you have to do kind of things incorrectly, right? Because if I'm fighting you, the whole point is that you don't see me coming. But on a screen fight, the camera has to see you coming, and your partner also has to see you coming. Because if you don't see me coming, I'm gonna hit you in the face on accident, and that's not a good thing. They're your dance partner. So, it can be kind of challenging for some people. But for me right now, I kind of joke that I'm not a traditional martial artist anymore. I do movie fu. Right, so you kind of have to do things a little bit incorrectly. You try to translate it onto screen to be as accurate as possible on screen, but at the same time, to be safe with your partner, and to be safe to make sure that the camera can see it, right? So that might be that you have to slow it down a little bit. You might have to go a little bit wider than you would in a real fight or something like that. So, so right now, whenever I have a new fight, I have to learn just enough of that particular type of martial art to get the flavor of it, but to also translate it into something that the audience is going to be able to read, but also try to be as truthful as possible to the art, so that it's not something that is foreign to somebody that actually practices that art.
Okay, that's cool. And today we have a second clip of his kung fu stunts.
Stunt work?
Yeah, let's take a look.
OOD, I've got multiple objects in the water. Starboard side, bearing 012 relative, approximately 3,000 yards.
Tell us where it is.
可以，有等老板来。Culturally, get up now.
Let me help
get
her,
up.
man.
Stay where you are. Safe. Open it.
What just happened?
Spartan time! Listen up!
Now that we have the real Ranger.
Hey, the dead! Sergeant, let me hear your war cry!
Hey, baby.
I'm king now.
Get over here.
Okay, very good. So, do you do choreography as well?
Yes, I also do fight choreography. Whatever people hire me for is really what I do. Coming into the film industry, not having any connection to it, not having any family in it either, you kind of I call myself a journeyman. I kind of had to figure out a lot of different ways into it and try to be useful wherever I could. Obviously, I have a certain kind of skill set that I came in with, but for me, it was just I tried to be useful, and I think I'm an imaginative person. I also like to write. Eventually, I want to be a director. I have directed 4 short films, which I've written and produced and starred in. So I try to try to keep that in mind when I'm doing my acting work, when I'm doing my stunt work, and if I get called and they want me to help put a fight together, I do that as well. And because I have this director's mindset, it helps me craft the choreography so that it translates to camera well.
Okay. So in this industry, is being a choreographer, have you have anybody you looked up to in the industry?
Of course, there's a lot of people I've looked up to, especially people that I work with now. Obviously growing up, there was like people like Jet Li and Jackie Chan and Jean-Claude Van Damme. One of my favorite movies growing up was Dragon, the Bruce Lee story, even though it's a little cheesy in some places, but, I think it was just growing up, especially in the place where I was at, there wasn't a lot of diversity. So, some of the themes of racism, not that I grew up in a racist place, but, think about race and everything like that was something that spoke to me and that I kind of looked forward to. But then now, growing up with Best of the Best, I started working with Simon Rhee, and he's a good friend of mine now, and he's somebody that I look up to, as a person now too, not just as a professional. There are people like James Liu, and I've worked with people like Jeff Wolf and Greg Barnett. I think these are amazing stunt coordinators, and it's just really great to be able to meet these people that I'm working with now that have made some of the best projects that I grew up with, and then kind of looking back at I feel like my life has almost gone full circle because I'm kind of meeting my heroes. Growing up, one of my favorite movies in like my high school or college, I forget when it came out. The Last Samurai, and then Hiroyuki Sanada was such a scene stealer in that movie, and then I ended up working with him on Westworld a couple of years ago, and I'm just like. Yeah, what? Yeah. It was really great. So it's really cool being able to be in this industry and work with my heroes.
Yeah, that's awesome, and you are into acting as well.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
how's that journey differ from being a stunt?
Well, it's kind of two sides of the same coin, right? So stunts, obviously when you go into a stunt scene, you have to go in with the idea of, okay, how am I going to do this scene without this guy hitting his head? Or, this girl not hitting the corner over here or not destroying the camera or the location. Versus when you're in there as an actor, you kind of have to let things go and you have to live truthfully under imaginary circumstances, as Meisner would say. And, kind of go into it like almost losing it a little bit. You have the lines, but you want to feel what the other person is going off of. So actually something that really spoke to me in acting, in my acting work, was actually I felt like especially I learned Meisner technique going into the film industry. And something that really spoke to me was the work off of your partner. And it's very much the same as how you have to work off of the other person in a fight, except in a fight obviously you're against each other, but then the other one you're just feeling what and there's a push and pull in the scene and being able to. So I really felt like it's kind of one of the last legs of my martial arts training is learning acting, because martial arts can teach you mental clarity, it can teach you physical discipline and all these different things, but one thing nothing can teach you is emotional control. And that's really something that spoke to me a lot, was that I feel like acting is that training of emotional control, bringing yourself to the edge of, insanity or anger or pleasure or happiness, and then coming back to yourself and being the same person that you are in your regular life. That's endlessly fascinating to me.
Which job do you feel more exhilarating?
I like them for different reasons, to be honest. I can't say that I like one more than the other. Stunt work, it's problem solving. I really love that aspect of it because I'm figuring out how to do this dangerous thing in the safest way possible. I mean, obviously there's risk, but people are like, oh, well, stunt people are daredevils. I was like, no, we're not daredevils. If anything, for me, it's like I feel like I am profoundly worried about getting injured and dying, which is why I figure out safe ways to do these things. I feel like somebody that's not worried about those things aren't going to be a good stuntman because then they're just going to be taking risks, and then they're going to be taking risks not only with my life but also with your life or the people that are on the crew and are running the set. And then acting, it's very cathartic. You get to become different types of people, and that's really awesome. Being able to live different aspects of life. I mean, that's something that we all wish that we could do anyway, and then an actor really gets to do that if they're doing the work correctly. I really love directing because you're crafting this world, this frame for the movie. Everything inside of it, like I'm taking away, putting things in, and making it what I think, and there's a sense of like almost kind of power that comes with that, right? And then I really love writing as well because you're really completely building a world, and I think that's endlessly fascinating. So I can't say I love any of them, any aspect more than the other. I really love them all for different reasons.
Okay, very good. Well, we have a clip for
My
Peter's.
stunt work.
Cool, awesome. Have you have any major injury during stunt work?
Luckily, no. Let's knock on wood. Obviously I've had some injuries. I have some stuff that's going to stick with me for the rest of my life. When I worked on a big movie, there was a time when I was supposed to go 45 feet into boxes, but instead I went 25 feet into the concrete. And so luckily I didn't break my back, but and then later on I did another thing where it's called a ratchet. They attach a wire to you and then they pull you, and then I landed on my head. So it's like, in that one, I'm not really sure where the things come up, but I get a full spine MRI every 2 years, and lo and behold, I have a few little, fractures in my spine. So, these kind of things, they stick with you, and I feel fine. And for the most part, I'm healthy, but, I know that later on I'm going to feel things a little bit more, as I get older. So, stunt work is no joke, and I think that that's one of the reasons why we really should spend some more time appreciating stunt people, because they are really sacrificing their bodies, and I feel like they don't get enough credit.
Yeah, well, indeed, because it's in the background and you don't see the face.
Right, exactly.
But now you in terms of acting, now you are on camera. How's that going? What's in store for you? You want to do more?
Oh yeah, no, I'm definitely. I've been an actor the whole time I've been a stunt person. Like I said, I love it for the cathartic nature of it and being able to tell stories, and also just the influence that it has on people. Film has this kind of magic that really changes how people look at the world and look at life, because they're seeing this person on screen going through something, and they're either commiserating or they're having some kind of sympathy towards it. So I love acting, and I want to keep doing it. I want to get bigger roles and keep on pushing that, and also I'm writing and directing my own films now, and I have a feature film that I'm developing that I'm going to be starring in as well. So I'm looking forward to being able to portray that and really push that out and help make some things in the world seem a little bit clearer to people that watch.
Oh, okay. So the feature you're developing, is it an action, a drama? What is it?
It's actually a science fiction drama.
Oh, okay.
It's a screenplay that I wrote, and it's set in the near future. It's about simulations and AI, which is something that's very pertinent right now.
Right.
Basically, the log line of it is that in the near future, a lonely man practices for a date with his dream girl by running simulations that are indistinguishable from reality. But in the process, he loses his mind and morality. So I always tell people that it's kind of a cross between the movie Her, Inception, and A Taxi Driver, because it is a bit of a messed up story. I'm not going to lie, but it's a small scale, and it very much deals with how this person is dealing with simulations that are indistinguishable from reality, and how he navigates that technology and how it's affecting his brain. Because the woman that he is running these simulations in, there's a real person, but he's not with that person. Her brain scan's not in the system. So when he's doing this date over and over, she's just actually some kind of weird combination of her social media profiles and his memories of her. So as you can kind of guess, it's not a very good combination for him to actually be practicing for his real date. So I really wanted to say something about this emerging technology that is coming into our lives, and how it's really going to affect us, not only on a personal level, but also socially.
Yeah, it's a huge thing. It's a big disruption. So it was very interesting. Now, as far as your acting concerns, how is Hollywood, particularly towards Asian men as an actor? You've been in the business for 13 years. Do you see it as a change for the better, or stay the same, or getting worse?
It's definitely getting better. I would say there's been a really big push for diversity lately, and I think that is a very good thing. I've obviously, with movies like Everything Everywhere All at Once, and a lot of the Parasite, movies coming out of Korea. There's a lot of really great movies that are getting general audiences to buy in, especially American audiences, and then Western audiences, and then of course the Eastern audiences are also watching it too. So now that's happening, there's a lot more interest in having Asian people in telling stories, and I think that's really great. For me, since I'm half, sometimes it can be a challenge, just because obviously they're not going to cast me as somebody that's full Asian, in a thing, and there's not a whole lot of, since there's a big diversity push, a lot of times they want somebody that's a full a certain race, and since I'm kind of in this middle ground, sometimes it can be challenging for me personally, which I'm willing to take up that. I think that the change that's happening is really good for just humanity in general, because at the end of the day, the media that we consume really influences how we look at other people and how we look at society in general. So I think that everything is great. It's just sometimes it can be a little bit of a headache for me, just because I'm like, oh well, shoot, they want a full Chinese person. I'm only half. So it's that can be a challenge sometimes. But other than that, though, I think that overall there is a lot more diversity. Obviously, it could be better, but I think that we're headed in the right direction.
Okay. So when they usually cast you, what kind of role do they cast you in?
Oh well, good. For me, it's kind of it's difficult sometimes for people to cast me. But one thing I'll say is that it might be difficult at first, but then later on, I'm hard to replace. So I think that you have to take the good with the bad, right? So for me, even though I know that sometimes when I do get cast, it's usually kind of like a general, any ethnicity could work, and then they're like, okay, well maybe we can have this person in there, which I actually like. I don't really want to have to conform to any certain stereotypical idea of what a certain race is supposed to be on something. And I do get cast as Asian sometimes, or not, or I'm also a quarter Mexican, and I'm also a quarter Italian. So I'm kind of in this strange pocket of it's like, well, what is he? I get that a lot actually on a personal level. Somebody's like, so what are you? I'm a toaster. No, but it's one of those things. I think at first, when I was younger, it affected me in a negative way. But as I got older, I really appreciate it, because especially when it comes to casting, I just know that it might be harder for me to get cast in the first place. But once I am cast, it's really hard to find a replacement. Yeah, so it's like they're kind of stuck with me after.
Oh, yeah, exactly. That's very good. That's definitely one unique aspect. If you can have that, that's that's. And what kind of advice do you have for people wanting to break into the industry in either in stunt or in acting?
Sure. I always kind of joke about this, but I have taught actually business seminars for people who are wanting to get into the industry, and I say, okay, so first off, don't do it. And then second off, if that doesn't stop you, then maybe you have a chance, right? Mm-hmm. Because this life isn't for everybody. It seems very, very fun, but it's gig work, it's freelance, which is very difficult, and like every job that you're hired on, you're also fired on every time that you're done working for them, right? Mm-hmm. So it can be really tough, even successful people, they might find success for a small amount of time, but then later on, there's always a dry spell for everybody, and then, if you don't know how to run your business, then, and even if you do, sometimes there's just bad luck that makes things happen, mm-hmm. like the pandemic, mm-hmm. like the strikes, like, and if you can't weather those storms, then all of a sudden you're in a bad position, so I really just, any advice I tell people is just really really figure out if this is the work that you really love. Because the work has to feed you sometimes. Mm-hmm. Sometimes there just isn't work out there. And then, the life of the artist is not an easy one for everybody, So it can be very, very alluring, mm-hmm. Thinking about it in this kind of way is like, oh, well, this is just going to be this fun thing that I can do and then people will pay me money. It's like, well, sometimes that's not the case. And then is the work really something that you love? Because if it isn't, then all of a sudden, 7 years down the road, maybe you have a dry spell and then you have to change to another job. People don't see this as a real job, so then all of a sudden you've been basically unemployed for 7 years, even if you found pretty good success. So, mm-hmm. So like I said, the advice that I have is really figure out if this is something that you love. If you want to be a stunt person, do you wake up thinking it's like, oh, how can I figure out this stunt and how to make it work and how to make it look cool on camera? Or do you wake up and you're excited to learn the lines and like live a life of another person and would you do it for free? Would you pay to do it? I've definitely paid to work when I first started. I had to, it definitely, whether it was my time or my money, had to go out of my way to do something for free, and but I loved it, and I wouldn't have traded that time for anything else. But if you only want to do it for the money, then obviously it's going to be a hard road, because sometimes it's not there. So my number one thing is really figure out, is this something that you love? Is this something that you're passionate about? And if it is, then you need to think about it in a business-minded sense if you want it to be a career. Or you can also just do community theater. And if it's something that you love, it's something that could happen. It doesn't have to be a profession. It is very difficult. Like I said, there's only a few people that are able to do it in the entire world. So yeah, you have to really realize that how difficult it is, and then if you're willing to weather the storms, because there's going to be some.
There you have it, wise word from a wise man. And so how can we find you? Do you have any social media handle?
Sure. You can find me on Instagram. It's at Peter Jang Official. Or at my website is www.simplicity.pictures. There's no .com. And then my personal website is www.simplicity.pictures/PeterJang. And that has a lot of the links to a lot of my different works. You can also find me on IMDb. So yeah, those are the main places.
Okay, awesome. So there you go. There you have it. We have Peter Jang this episode, and hope you enjoyed it. And we'll see you next time.